Imagine yourself in a high-rise building made up of 31 floors. So it's a 31-story building. Think of it as an apartment complex, units. And each floor has many apartments. Now, some of the people, inhabitants of each floor, might or might not know their neighbor or neighbors. But they do know one thing, that their floor exists, that their own level is there, it exists. No one can deny that. And you might find other floors where the inhabitants might know of those people, those floors beneath them, or at least one floor beneath them, and then the one above. This is a metaphor I'm using, a simile for the 31 layers of existence, what we call samsara. The cycles of rebirth take place throughout. What we call existence as such is comprised of 31 levels of existence, of which the human realm, human beings living on this planet, in other planets, in other solar systems, in other galaxies, in other dimensions, you might say, but essentially human beings having the same senses, might think differently, nevertheless human beings, live on one floor of this 31-story building. Animals, on the other hand, live on a different floor. So, samsara is comprised of, as I said, these 31 layers of existence. I've mentioned them many times in previous talks, but the question here is about, is there an escape from one floor to the next? This comes up because many traditions, many religions do advocate and have been advocating for leaving this plane of existence, this life, this incarnation, if you will, for another one. At the end of this one, especially if it's an uncomfortable one, or essentially at the end of every human life, there's the longing, the yearning for something that is everlasting, youth that is everlasting, having vigor that doesn't go away, etc. So we have that wishful, that hopeful prospect. Almost every human being has that at the end of life, which comes from the sense of latching on and also running away from the primal fear that we have, fear of loss, losing of our sense of self, or ego if you want to call it. But essentially, we keep recycling through these 31 layers of existence. So is there escape? Really? When we're being a matter of fact, there isn't. Because you're still going to be under the rooftop or the roof of samsara. There's no escaping that if you are, and this is a big if, so long as you are still latching on to more existence, more experiencing of delight, more experiencing of the other, then you are basically asking for another birth. If you have that birth waiting for you somewhere at the end of this life, then you can bet on it that You're also going to have aging. You're going to have old age, whatever kind of incarnation, whether you're a cat, a frog, a human, a deva, in a higher realm, still you're going to be under the same umbrella called samsara, within the 31-story building, somewhere. So we go through these, so long as we have the craving for tasting more. Let me have another shot at this thing called life. Oh, next time I come back, I want to be this. Or next time I come back, I want to be able to do this. That momentum that we have is quite powerful. Enough so that it drags us through apartment to apartment in each floor and floor to floor, up and down. We take the elevator, we take the stairs, but basically we are stuck in this building. And by the way, the Buddha declares that we are also in a building that's on fire. So, the building is burning. That's not good. Imagine if the building is burning that you're in, you turned on the volume of your TV, your music, so that you don't hear the sirens outside. Evacuate now, get out of the building now. It really doesn't matter. Because you're too busy looking at other things, avoiding the sirens, scrolling, thinking about the other. And every single person in every single apartment on every single floor is pretty much not interested in running out of the building. That's the scary part. Imagine, the Buddha taught people for 45 years. And out of the thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that he taught, only a portion, even though we say thousands, of course, but still it's a portion, only a portion of what could have been even bigger. Why? Because people, because of our ignorance, it's too much to ask for a person to give up at that moment of death the longing, because it's a big unknown. And you don't have to wait for the end of life to really think about that moment of desperation. We do this from moment to moment. We might not realize it, but we do this every day. When an experience happens and it doesn't go the way we want, and it always is not going to turn the way we want, always, because even the thing that you wanted to get and you got it, it never will have the same impact as it was purported to be, as you were, building it up to be. So there is that immediate disappointment also. So we can never truly be satisfied. That's why the incredibly rich person will still feel they're lacking. They don't have enough. The moment you eat or have access to something, delicious, or some wild, some incredible experience you wanted to have, and you have it, you want to do it again. I remember a few decades ago, more than actually a couple of decades ago, I decided to give myself a birthday gift, and that was, I was a high school teacher then, and I, without my dad knowing, because my dad would have freaked out had he heard about it, But I had always wanted to know whether I would be able to jump, out of a plane, skydiving. And basically, long story short, I bought myself a gift, which was to jump out of a plane as my birthday gift. And also I hired someone to they had this function, the service of recording me, video recording me during the jump. So anyhow, you and others, they pull up, the airplane goes up pretty fast to 15,000 feet. And then after about 7 hours of training, because it wasn't tandem, tandem means you jump with someone else, a dive, somebody who was a master, was a teacher. In my case, because I'm too big, and there were no parachutes big enough for me and someone else, so I had to jump by myself, and I barely made the weight category, and with the height and all that. And after 7 hours of training, going through the drills again and again, and I was exhausted from early in the morning, finally, late in the afternoon, I was able to be on the plane and looking out of a doorless fuselage, and we jumped. 2 dive masters jumped with me to a certain elevation, altitude, and after, I think it was 6,000 feet, they separated, so I was all by myself. Anyhow, I landed after a few minutes. It was quite an unusual, exhilarating even experience, fine. But the moment I landed, this is the point that I'm trying to make here. The moment I landed, and you know how the drill goes, basically how to collect your parachute, the canopy, to make sure that all the threading and all that doesn't get all jumbled up. And the truck came, picked me up, and we went to the main hangar, and everybody's setting up the parachute so that it gets packed well. So the dive masters, the instructors came in, and they were like, "Oh, congratulations, how does it feel? So are you going to come back tomorrow?" That's the point I'm trying to make. Here were people around me who had jumped at least 200-300 times. And this was my only time that I jumped. Okay, the high is there, the exhilaration is there, fine. But I was done. I was happy. That was good. I got my answer. And I looked at him and I said, I don't know. No, he says, you have to come because now you have the bug. You have to do it again because... And I couldn't, continue that conversation because if I were being honest, I would just tell him, that, I told him it's just that. I don't need more. Because people don't like it. It's a norm, in essence. It's an unspoken rule that you will never get satisfied by getting it once, because there isn't such a thing. In most people's dictionaries of experience, everybody knows it, so that's why they want the other. Well, why? If it was that good, if the promising thing was that good, the moment I was able to obtain it, that should have ended the story. Why do I keep throwing myself into the hamster wheel for a promise of getting something, which I know deep down that I will never truly get, at least the way I want it? But I can try, right? That trying keeps us in the building. And we want to mute out, muffle, completely silence the sirens, the alarm bells, the fire sirens, the alarms. So we just keep moving around the apartments. At best, we move around the stories or the floors of this building without wanting to get out. The Buddha describes, the simile is not entirely mine when you bring it in the context of a house that's burning, because the Buddha himself used that. A house where people are inside a burning house, yet they don't run outside. Or if they do run, they want to run into another house that's burning. It's pretty, it sounds pretty simplistic, but it's amazing how we dull things so that we do not see, we do not accept reality. So we're much better off, we think, with telling ourselves fairy tales. So how gullible are you willing to remain? For how long? That's what I mean. For how long? Because the fact of describing dukkha or suffering, many people don't like it. The fact that the Buddha talked about dukkha, suffering, but he also talked essentially about dukkha simply because of pointing it out to us. That's like turning off the volume so you can hear the alarm bells. You can smell the fire, the smoke coming at you from underneath the walls or the door of this apartment and building, floor. But he didn't just teach suffering or dukkha, he also showed you the exit. Freedom, where fresh air is found, safety is found, because that's another thing. When you are in samsara, existence basically, the 31 layers, that covers everything. Not some, but everything. Whatever you've heard about in other religions, heavens and hells, this and that, they all fall within the building. In some nook and cranny, some floor, some story, some apartment. There's nothing outside of that. That's samsara. So, to get out, you need a plan. You need, if you ever go to a hotel or somewhere, any building, usually where there's many apartments, they usually will have a map of the floor and especially indicating the areas where you find the safety ladder, or take the stairs, they say. Don't take the elevator, just in case the elevator, the wires break or don't work. Find yourself to the escape route. With that, go out to safety. Nibbana is that safety. Unlike what many people have taught and described Nibbana as being something outside of this life, something that waits for you after you die, which is something that the Buddha never taught. It's never part of the teaching called Buddhism. It's something that later on individuals with weaker minds and less intent hearts came up with, basically out of laziness, because they didn't practice well enough. So it's very easy for you to say, oh, we will attain after we die, because that means you just nullified your chances of attaining in this life. So Nibbana is to be experienced here. Nibbana is another definition for absence of suffering. Absence of suffering is a definition for Nibbana. Another, out of many. Because Nibbana also means the extinction of, in other words, fire. There is rest. There is calm. There is tranquility. There is peace. The Buddha was not interested in teaching people to practice so that they could one day achieve peace after death. The Buddha was not interested in that. He was the ultimate medicine man, physician, surgeon. They want to get rid of the cause of the suffering. The surgeon, the doctor, the medicine man. So they don't believe in delaying anything. They don't work with symptoms. If it's a true doctor, physician, they have the conscience and wisdom to say, no. We got to go after the cause. So the cause of suffering is our unwillingness to see the ignorance, basically, willfully ignoring the fact that we have a strong desire for this, for that. And even though we might get our hands on it, we are never satisfied. Now, to go ahead and repeat that, that's stupidity, that's ignorance, which keeps us in the same old hamster wheel. But to see this already, it creates a separation, a space between you and the possibility of you dragging yourself back into suffering. Already you are practicing the third noble truth, because you're seeing your own contribution to your own suffering. And the escape route is none other than the Noble Eightfold Path, which is right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, samadhi. These have to be there to get yourself out. Those are the safety, exit, stairs, the fire ladder, if you will. And unlike in real life, you're not going to have firemen or fire department to come and break through the glass with their, very high, upgoing escalators or ladders to reach to you, to pull you down, to carry you down. It doesn't work like that in samsara. No one will come to save you. So I guess that's where the simile no longer works. That's the extent. And it's not important at that point, because ultimately you're the only one who is the author of your own happiness, as well as, sadly, your own suffering. Ultimately, nobody else is. Now, many people are causing pain and suffering and tragedy in other people's lives. That goes without saying. However, in the grander scheme of things, we are ultimately responsible for our own happiness or suffering. Somebody can torture you, somebody can put you in a terrible state, can put you in a prison, in isolation, deprive you of your rights. But it's very important for you to know that ultimately you have your own mind with which you can protect yourself. They can't reach that. Unless you allow them to, of course. So a person who might be serving a death sentence, or let's say life sentence, might be in jail, in prison, but living as though he has his own mind. He can create whatever he wants in that space, while his body his freedoms are taken away. He has to have a curfew. He has to stay in a small chamber. He cannot do multiple of things that other people, we take for granted. But in his mind, he can be very well protected, enjoying even, versus somebody who is not, basically outside of a prison wall, supposedly free, independent, but very much of a slave, or slave to their fears. Many of us are living in fear, even though we are not living necessarily behind actual, bars of a prison cell. So, where do you want to go? Back to your apartment? To another floor? Go and take elevator up, elevator down, stairs up, stairs down? Or are you looking for the exit sign? The Buddha would definitely be interested in seeing us run, in fact, towards the exit. Because he would say, long have you spent countless lifetimes in this building, moving about, with the sole aim of gaining some satisfaction, which we never got. Unfortunately, however, we don't remember. That's the problem. We do not remember our past history. Our past lives, our past addictions, our past promises we made to ourselves, which they never came true. And notwithstanding that, if you just were to look at this life, just this life, how many disappointments have you had? In a day, let alone a lifetime. Of things, just of life. You wanted to obtain this and you got it, and then you just go, But ultimately, it's not about getting things. It's about aging, growing up, aging, the body, which we have invested so much in, until we see that it is a losing battle, ultimately. Even if you've had a healthy body, the Buddha says, even if you make it to 100, or you go beyond the 100, so you become a centenarian, you still are going to die, either on this side of the 100 or the other side of the 100, the Buddha says. Either way. So it's not a conquest of anything, it's not a vanquishing of anything. You will die, okay. And it's not how have you lived. In Buddhism, we don't care about that ultimately. What have you done with this time? That's more important. What have we done towards moving ourselves away from suffering? Putting an end to suffering. While we are alive, that is where Nibbana occurs. That is where we have, this life, is where we have the tools, the ability, the time, and the good fortune of meeting the Dhamma. Still. Because not every life will bring us face to face with the Dhamma. Who knows the next time you come back, how long of a time gap that will be. And we don't know when is the next time where you become, when will be the next time rather, where you become a human again. Because the Buddha says, chances are most humans will fall below a human realm after this life is spent. Why? Because the natural tendency of people is to engage in demeritorious actions, meaning actions that are harmful, non-beneficial, not good. And everybody who has access to resources in the world, you just look around. Very rarely do you come across an individual who has all those resources and is in fact living virtuously. Not what they show to the media and things like that. No, really living virtuously. They don't steal. They don't lie. How many people do you know who do not lie? Who do not deceive anyone? You look around. Anywhere you look, everybody is ready to lie. And that's another reason why we have this debacle of a world today. When a society begins to be okay with lying, with deceiving, treating it as a commonality, something normal, then wars are explained, injustices are explained, ruthless behavior, savagery is explained, because it starts from lying. So that's one of the reasons why I mentioned about the Noble Eightfold Path, because right speech is not lying, not deceiving, not telling false things to get some gain. Moving around the floors of this burning building gives us the illusion that, oh, I'm free. I'm no longer at my old floor or my old apartment. I've upgraded to another level. But there is no freedom in this building. There's no escaping in that sense by simply moving around the different floors. But that's what people are doing. That's what beings keep doing. The Buddha would often have visitations by devas and other beings. They would come usually when people had gone and retired, at night. So there was a period at night, past midnight, where the Buddha would allow them to approach and ask questions. And they were curious to know what, for example, in one case, what is the source of happiness? These were devas. These were like living on such a high level compared to a human level of, you name it, joy, happiness, delights, celestial delights, this and that. So you can call them, let's say they're near or on floor number, 26 or 22 or 16. We're simply on level 5, by the way. We're on the 5th story. That's where we are, by the way. So, to be able to take a step back and just think about that for a moment, that there really is no escaping. If my hope is to be, this is what I was mentioning in the beginning, to go to a higher level in this burning building, somehow it's going to give you a better view outside. It's going to be a cleaner air, some type of an escape. It never is, because at the end of that life, there is an end to that life. This is where Buddhism differs from all other traditions, because the Buddha was the only one who came in and said, no, celestial life is temporary, just like the human one. Now, compared to quantitatively speaking, the human life at the most is going to be about 100, 150 years. Okay. In the celestial realm, by the way, depending on which one and how far up you go from a human realm, it's going to be exponentially more and more and more lengthier, rather, lasting for far longer time in human years. We're talking hundreds and millions of years, and in the higher realms it will be billions and billions and mahakalpas. Billions will not be enough as a number to gauge, to measure. But at the end of those each individual lifetimes, there is a thing called aging, decay, aging and death. So the Devas were shocked to find that out. And they realized the truth. And they actually started practicing. Some of them were wise enough to start applying the Noble Eightfold Path, and that's how many Devas themselves became practitioners, followers of Buddhism, became students of the Buddha, even became awakened as Devas. Because they realized even in their glorious realms, being so radiant, so surrounded by delightful experiences and things, all that is temporary. They realized it's not just escaping from human realm, and that's the true escape, because one has to truly escape entirety of samsara to be truly having escaped, found safety, found security. And that's what Nibbana is, ultimate security. There's many definitions earlier I was saying about ending of suffering, but crossing the flood is another definition. Going to the other shore is another definition of Nibbana. Extinction of this craving for another life, because each life will bring with it its sufferings. You will never have a birth without death, okay? Once you're born, you will have to face everything that package brings. But we've convinced ourselves that, well, a good life, I can actually, proportion how much suffering I can have. I'd rather have this much suffering versus that much. No, the Buddha is giving us the outlet to come out completely, get out of suffering. Suffering is not our lot. Okay? People have given up on escape. That's what the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, that's what he did. People told him that, who are you to try to escape? The Vedas and all those Upanishadic, practitioners and philosophers and all these Brahmins, they were completely satisfied with the fact that, hey, ultimately we're going to just be Brahma, somewhere in the higher levels of, celestial realms, but that's it. We're always going to be part of samsara. Siddhartha said, no, I'm going to find a way out. Now you need a special kind of a person. When I mean special, it's so rare. Rare that we have the Dhamma, rare that we still have Buddhism, because it's a singular event, which we are still in it, by the way. The Buddha is dead, yeah, 2,600 years ago, fine. The teachings are what matters, that he discovers and leaves it, gives it to us. So we have that. So you have today the same opportunities as people did at the time of the Buddha, hearing it from him. So you can consider yourself very, very fortunate. We all are, if we come to the Dhamma, and even hearing these words. It's quite outstanding. This is already showing you, the listener, the questioner here in this case, you are looking at the exit map on your floor right now. But it behooves upon us to walk in that direction. Whoever made it out, and plenty of people have made it out, even devas, as I mentioned, made it out of samsara. They made that life their very last, and they attained full freedom. And that's another definition for Nibbana, by the way. Sukhyoto.